You are listening to part 77 of our series, 7 Medicines, The Wise Woman Way, with Susan Weed at Time Monk Radio. Hello, Susan, and welcome back to Time Monk Radio.
Thank you so much, Gemini. It's wonderful to be here with all of you once again, talking about dream blessings and the 7 medicines. We have been spending quite some time in the 6th medicine, pharmaceutical medicine. And we could profitably go on and on. There's certainly a lot of things that we haven't talked about. There's a lot of drugs that people are using to deal with diabetes, to deal with a huge variety of things. But we are going to wrap up on pharmaceutical medicine because I think that it's pretty clear what's going on. Drugs are being overused. They are big business, $374 billion in drugs.
Wow.
Was spent. That was in 2014. That was 3 years ago. And we know that in the past 2 years, prices on drugs have skyrocketed. This is very, very big business. In fact, as of 2015, according to the National Center for Health Statistics, about 8% of Americans who had received a drug prescription weren't taking the prescribed medicine because they simply couldn't afford to do so. So I thought we would wrap up our episodes on the 6th medicine, pharmaceutical medicine, by looking at how to save on drugs if we are going to take them, how to take them if we're going to take them, how to get rid of them, and some last thoughts on protecting yourself if you are taking drugs. All right. How can you save money on your prescription drugs? Well, the very easiest way is to say no. A doctor wants to write you a prescription, say no, or at the very least say maybe, or say how come, or say what's it going to do? And if you are already taking drugs, we're not talking about new ones, you can ask the doctor if you need those drugs that you are taking. And it's a good idea, in fact, to review all of the drugs you're taking on a yearly basis with your doctor. The drugs that you're taking might be brand name drugs. Many people get used to taking brand name drugs because they're given samples, often lavish amounts of samples by their doctor. And then when it comes time to actually go to the drugstore, they just get what they've been taking. However, generics, by law, must contain the exact same active ingredient in exact same quality, exact same strength, and exact same purity as the brand name drug. Let's make a comparison. 30 days of Lipitor, a statin drug that lowers cholesterol, is $390, and 30 days of atorvastatin, a statin drug that lowers cholesterol, is $10, savings of $380, and that's just one generic. Sometimes people say there must be something wrong with generics, but there is not. They are, in fact, virtually identical to the brand name drugs. You can also ask your doctor if there's any alternatives. Sometimes you're taking a drug that isn't covered by insurance or that seems very expensive to you, and you can ask your doctor to change your medication to something that is covered by your insurance or something that's less expensive. Interestingly enough, the older drugs, which are often safer, in fact, are generally less expensive than the newer drugs. I was reading a question and answer with somebody who'd written into a MD counseling site and said, I've been taking warfarin, which is a blood thinning compound, and there's newer drugs out. What should I do? Should I switch? And the doctor answered at some length about the value of all of the different ones. And he said, but really, one of the bottom lines is that the new drugs are incredibly expensive, contain to warfarin, which you've been taking for a long time and are doing very well on. However, due to some difficulties with warfarin, it might be wise for you to see if you can switch. So Talk to your doctor. Find out what your doctor thinks. Not all doctors are necessarily going to tell you to keep taking the drugs that you are taking. Sometimes there's even an over-the-counter alternative to what you've been taking. And as the point I have been making for many, many months now here with you, there are almost always herbal alternatives to what you've been taking. Granted, those herbal alternatives will not be covered by your insurance. Still and all, they're going to improve your health far more than the drugs. If you're going to take a drug, get a bigger dose. Not that you're going to take a bigger dose, but that you're going to split that pill. So if you usually take 50 milligrams, get pills in 100 milligrams. They're far less expensive. In other words, 100 milligram pill is not twice as much as 250 milligram. The 100 milligram saves you a lot of money, and you can buy a pill splitter and split those pills so that you're only taking 50, or even once you have that pill splitter, you can start gradually seeing which of those drugs you can actually come down in the dose on. Splitting pills is a good way to reduce your copays because you get fewer prescriptions. Getting a longer supply also means that you get fewer prescriptions and reduce your copays. Ask for a 90-day prescription for something you're going to be taking on a regular basis rather than a 30-day prescription. Also saves you time and effort that you don't have to go to the drugstore so many times. Shop around. We do it for other things. Somehow we assume that the price of drugs are set. Not so. There are really enormous variations in the retail prices of drugs. Does your insurer have a preferred pharmacy? That can make a difference in the price of the drug. And different places have different prices. Big stores like grocery chains and big box stores offer hundreds of genetic medications for only $4 for a 30-day supply or $10 for a 90-day supply. And you can go to any store and ask for their list, and different stores have different lists. If you want to go online, you can go to WERX.com, which will help you compare the prices of drugs, or GOODRX.com. That's WeRx.com or GoodRx.com are places to compare prices of drugs to help you find the best price for the drugs that you are taking. And don't assume that getting your drug covered by insurance is the least expensive way to go. Check it out. Sometimes just going to another pharmacy or going to one of those big box or grocery stores is actually going to save you a lot more money than by putting it on your insurance. There are also lots of organizations and people out there who are happy to help you get your medications in a variety of different ways. Needymeds.org, PPARX.org, and then a whole bunch of sites at health.harvard.edu/. One of them is state-drug-programs. Another one is drug-savings, especially for people on Medicare. And another one is drug-maker-assistance-program, and this links you to the individual manufacturers of drugs and their assistance programs. You can also find information at healthfinder.gov/RxDrug, and that's the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So all of these places are happy to assist you in finding the best and least expensive places to get your drugs in the United States. And that, of course, is the last way to reduce your drug expense, and something that more and more people are doing, and that is to buy drugs from outside the United States. Needless to say, drug manufacturers in the United States do not like this at all, and they throw up all kinds of, it turns out to be not exactly truths about the drug supplies in other countries not being dependable. Many people that I know who, for one reason or another, do have to take drugs on a daily basis, often get them from Canada. Our neighbor there to the north has laws and that are extremely similar to those in the United States, and it is basically the same drug companies that are making the drugs there that are making them here. Most people agree that there is truly no difference between drugs that are made in Canada and drugs made in the United States, except the price. And the price can be considerably lower. Check it out. Ask your friends. See what's happening with that. All right. If we're going to take drugs at all, then we would like to help you take those drugs, says the Annals of Family Medicine, because it turns out that swallowing pills is another big problem for people. A study of 151 volunteers found that leaning forward, putting the capsule on your tongue, taking a sip of water, and then tilting your head toward your chest actually makes it easier to swallow the capsule. But for tablets, you can put a tablet on your tongue, close your lips around a pop bottle opening, and suck in water as you tilt your head back as you swallow the pill and the water. And you can even go to the Annals of Family Medicine and get illustrated instructions for taking your pills. The things we study. How fascinating. How do you get rid of unused drugs? This is, in fact, I learned, a rather serious problem. In fact, accidental drug use sends almost 500,000 people to the emergency room every year and causes about 16,000 deaths. In other words, prescription medicines that have been prescribed for one person and that are in a home where there are more than one person living are not sealed tightly, are not put away securely, or are left around after being partly used, especially in the case of opiate painkillers, and someone else gets into those drugs and is injured, even killed by them. So let's listen up. If we take drugs, there are ways to get rid of them. Until recently, the only ways that most of us had to get rid of drugs was to flush them down the toilet, which is not great because, of course, they're going to go into the water and other stuff out there. You know, I'm sure you've all heard the thing that they tested water all over the world, and the water everywhere, free water, municipal water, there's drugs in it, there's hormones in it, there's antibiotics in it, there's painkillers in it. Those drugs, it turns out, are pretty hard to get out of the water supply once they're flushed down the toilet, so not ideal. Or if we didn't want to do that, and thank goodness some of us didn't want to do that, there would be a drug take-back day, and we'd have to wait, and then, if you missed it, then you'd have to wait again. However, things have changed. There are now drop-off spots at pharmacies, hospitals, clinics, and long-term care centers where you can go any time without an appointment. Yes, indeed, and get rid of those drugs. To find a drop-off spot near you, call the DEA registration, that's the Drug Enforcement Administration registration, at 800-882-9539, or go to deadiversion.usdoj.gov and look for drug disposal. You can't get rid of asthma inhalers, insulin syringes, or any other syringes, or any medication that contains iodine, marijuana, or thermometers with mercury in them. But many medications can just be put in the trash. Here's how you can throw a drug away. First, get the drug out of its original container, and if possible, if it's tablets, smash it up, or if it's capsules, open them and mix it up with something very unappealing like used coffee grounds, used kitty litter, or sawdust. Yuck! Then put the miserable mess in a plastic bag that you tie up tightly or some other thing that isn't going to leak, and put it in the trash. You can throw away the prescription bottle too, but remove that label with your name, address, and any other information on it. Syringes, of course, usually do not just get thrown in the trash. If the syringe does, the sharp does not. They are certainly considered hazardous waste in a great many places, but you can check disposemymeds.org or sharpsinc.com/locations to find pharmacies in your community that are willing to take care of those sharps. For instance, if you are injecting insulin and need to deal with those. All right. Coming to a close on the sixth medicine, pharmaceutical medicine, with acknowledgement that there are times that we do choose to take drugs. There are times where taking drugs is the best idea. I know many people who take daily thyroid medication. I have many people in my family who are taking insulin or other diabetic medications. There's a lot of diabetes in my family. I know people who are taking medications that truly are life-saving for them. And so we want to say, hooray, that these things are available to us and that they can help make life better and prolong life for people, and that any of us at any time may find ourselves in a situation where taking a drug is going to be better than the alternative, which is surgery. We remember that the 7 medicines are in order depending on how dangerous they are. And so pharmaceutical medicine, dangerous though it is nonetheless less dangerous than high-tech medicine, than breaking and entering. So sometimes taking a drug is just the right thing to do. I remember when my sweetheart was cutting down on the amount of physical effort that he was making because he was having some problems. And I suggested to him that he could take a very mild drug that would relieve those problems and allow him to be more physically active. And he did that, and in fact the physical activity soon made it unnecessary for him to take that drug. So sometimes a drug is a bridge through while our behavior or a change in diet helps us to resolve what's going on. There are some good reasons for taking drugs, and we are all very, very thankful that we have them. Remember that the arc of herbal medicine runs from naked people rolling in the herbs. Nowadays, we guess that would be naked people in a bathtub with herbs, to a white-coated lab technician who is creating drugs from substances seen in plants and other places in nature. It is true that over 100,000 Americans die every year from adverse drug reactions, however, and that 2 million plus people a year in the USA are seriously injured by drugs. As a matter of fact, there are some estimates that more than 2 million people get antibiotic-resistant infections every year in the United States. So it is certainly a serious problem, and we do need to protect ourselves, even if we are gaining some benefit from the drugs. The first way that I suggest, and I have mentioned worst pills, best pills quite a few times, but I'm going to mention it again. You can find them at worstpills.org, worstpills.org, worstpills.org. If I was going to take any drug, I would go immediately to worstpills.org, and I would find out what they had to say about that drug. Public citizen there, looking out for my interests. Then I would read the package insert that comes with the drug. There is information that is supplied with each drug. If the print is too small and the print is tiny, take it to a copy shop and ask them to enlarge it so that you can actually read it. It can be kind of serious going and hard reading, but it is advised before you take any drug to really understand what it is, what it's doing, and what the side effects can be. Do you have cold feet? And we don't mean, are you frightened? We mean, really, are your feet cold? It turns out that drugs can cause cold feet. Beta blockers, taken to reduce high blood pressure, can cause very cold feet. Chemotherapy can cause cold feet, and it may take up to 6 months to appear after the treatment, and it can last for up to 10 years. Stimulants that are used to treat attention deficiency disorder like Ritalin and Dexedrine can cause very cold feet in children, and nasal sprays with pseudoepinephrine like Sudafed can also cause cold feet. So if you've been diagnosed with Raynaud's syndrome, which is cold hands and cold feet due to constriction of the blood vessels, take a look around. It may not be that you have a problem. It may be that you have a problem drug that was causing your feet and hands to be cold. Drugs can also cause a lot of other problems, and one of the ones that is really getting a lot of press nowadays is the effects that drugs can have on your eyes, drying out your eyes. I was curious about that because I've been seeing more and more advertisements for things to wet the eyes, and it made me kind of curious as to why we suddenly seem to be having an epidemic of dry eyes. And it turns out that drugs in two categories that we have talked about, antihistamines and blood pressure drugs, which are taken by millions of people, can cause extremely dry eyes. Again, you might want to switch, cut down on your dose, or consider whether or not herbs would work as well if your drugs are causing dry eyes. Throughout the time together that we've been talking about the sixth medicine, pharmaceutical medicine, I have been pointing out to you that each drug that we take interferes with our nutrition. Some things like statin directly interfere with certain needed things, like statins interfere with CoQ10. Other drugs simply interfere with our ability to uptake needed vitamins or needed minerals. Be sure to check it out and to compensate. If you're taking a statin drug, take CoQ10 supplement as well. Learn what your drug that you're taking is doing and bring in a complementary medicine to take care of yourself. And more, we will be able to use drugs more wisely because we will be able to individuate our drug usage. Available right now, the Food and Drug Administration has on its website a list of more than 150 medications for which DNA screening can avert futile treatments or adverse reactions. Medications, of course, affect different people in different ways, and we can analyze a person's genetic code and predict which drugs will work best for each patient. So, if you want to take care of yourself, check that out before you take a drug. Earlier this year, the French company BioTrial, I'm looking to see when this was. This was November of 2016, so this was just a few months ago. The French company BioTrial held a new clinical trial on an anti-anxiety drug that they had developed, and it didn't go very well. 5 of the 8 participants became gravely ill, and 1 actually died. Now, this is certainly not the norm, but 90% of drugs that are tested on human beings don't work. Whoa. So researchers are trying to see if they can build a human body without the body. In fact, they're calling it the eye chip, and they're hoping that it will be the future of drug testing. All right. Right now, what we do is first we test the drug in a petri dish. So we test it against cells that we're hoping it will target, and if it passes that, then we test it in animals. So in petri dishes is in vitro, in glass, and then in animals is in vivo. But testing drugs on animals provides limited information. Tumors develop differently in mice than they do in humans, and we know all along that keeping large populations of mice and other animals in labs is not really giving us the information that we want. It's the best we can do at this point because we find it very unethical to keep human beings locked up in labs and to study them. But cells are picky. You know, they die in response to subtle changes in acidity or humidity, and so the scientists are very, very happy. The scientists at Harvard, MIT, and Los Alamos National Lab have been building tiny organs of their own, and they are going to link them up into an eye chip that can test drugs, and they can actually make organ chips with specific patient cells so that they can test for a specific person and find the ideal drugs that will work in that person. You know, everybody reacts to drugs a little bit differently. It's not as cut and dried as they would have you believe, says Jennifer Harris, a researcher. Personalized drug regimes will be the future of medicine. That's kind of ominous, isn't it? I mean, the personalized part, we like that personal part, but the future of medicine, it reminded me of the MDs in England who, when they looked at all of the drugs that were suggested for people from their 50s on to be taking to prevent this, that, or the other things, the blood pressure lowering drugs and the statin drugs and so on and so forth. And these MDs from England sat down and they realized that you could get the same effects by eating foods like a glass of wine, a cup of green tea, a square of chocolate, and they made just a little list of the foods that they thought would be preferable to taking this handful of drugs on a daily basis. So do I want my future to be individualized drugs? Well, I guess if it has to be drugs, I would indeed rather that they were individualized drugs. But I certainly don't want my future to be a future of taking drugs. And that is why I am maintaining my health by using all of the steps of medicine. On a daily basis, I engage in serenity medicine. I use story medicine as a way to understand what's going on with me and my health. I use mind medicine to help me envision and manifest the very best health that I could possibly have. I see to my lifestyle medicine so that I am engaging in yoga and Tai Chi and Qigong, walking, doing weight-bearing exercise, even going to the gym for some resistance exercise, as well as drinking my nourishing herbal infusions and eating a superb diet. When I need medicines, then I reach for my green allies, all the wonderful and trusty herbs that are there, and other forms of alternative medicine like massage and acupuncture and chiropractic. Very, very rarely do I find that I need to move into the situation of taking a drug. And if I do, I'm always eager to go back to my herbal friends and to leave the drug as soon as I possibly can. It's been a great time exploring pharmaceutical medicine, and next week we're going to open a new chapter and look at the seventh and last medicine, high-tech medicine. Looking forward to being with you then, Gemini.
Thank you so much, Susan. And this concludes part 77 of our series, The 7 Medicines the Wise Woman Way, with Susan Weed at Time Monk Radio.